Picture this. Your favorite NBA team is one of the most talented young players in the league, one of the most respected coaches, a solid supporting cast that's remained mostly unchanged, and it's coming off the best defensive season in league history. Yet instead of having success, it's struggling to get out of the bottom of the standings. That sounds like a nightmarish situation, but unfortunately, it's exactly what's happened to the Dallas Mavericks during the first few months of the season. They've yet to find a rhythm, and even though there's still time to fix things, they've arguably been one of the biggest disappointments of the year. But how did it come to this? How is it that one of the most intriguing teams of the last season is suddenly second to last in the Western Conference? And most importantly, is there anything they can do to get back on track? Well, let's talk about it. Just a few months ago, the Mavericks were one of the feel-good stories in the league. They managed to return to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. And even though they were eliminated in the first round, they impressed everyone by presenting a more talented team with a serious challenge. They got there behind the play of Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis, a duo that was playing at its best before the suspension of the season, and helped the team post the most efficient offense in league history. They were far from perfect, but they found a way to get the best out of their players, and that led to their first winning season in the post-Nowitzki era. On top of that, the emergence of Doncic as a superstar gave them a legitimate MVP candidate earlier than anyone could have anticipated. And somehow he managed to play even better during the postseason. So considering they kept their roster mostly intact during the offseason and that Doncic and some of the other players were expected to continue making improvements on their games, it seemed like a realistic goal for Dallas to climb a few spots in the standings. However, there was a catch. Porzingis suffered a torn meniscus during the series against the Clippers and would miss the first few weeks of the season as he recovered from surgery. In other words, the Mavericks would need to start the season without their second-best player, and Luka would have to assume a bigger responsibility on the offensive end to help his team win. Things went relatively well for the team during that stretch as they won 5 of their first 9 games without Kristaps, and also won the game in which he made his season debut. But unfortunately, things would only get more difficult from that point on. The Mavericks went on to lose 10 of their next 14 games, including a stretch where they had 6 consecutive losses against teams competing for playoff positioning in the West. They were completely out of rhythm, and while the fact that they went through such a radical change may seem unusual, the reason behind their struggles was pretty simple. They weren't healthy enough to develop any kind of consistency. Aside from Porzingis recovering from surgery, the team also had to deal with the pandemic, and it didn't take long for some of their key pieces to be forced to miss some games because of health protocols. As a result, at least 5 rotational players have missed 9 games or more, and Coach Rick Carlisle has had to use 12 different starting lineups during the first 24 games of the season. In other words, the team has had to play without some of its best players more often than not. They've rarely been able to play with a healthy lineup, and when they've done it, they haven't had enough time to build winning habits out of it. But that's something that should change organically as the season progresses. If most of their rotational players can remain healthy for at least a few weeks, the team should be able to start playing better as a unit, especially considering most of their key players have already played with each other before. On top of that, they should receive some help from their schedule in the coming weeks. So far, they've played most of their games against teams that participated in last year's playoff or are currently in the run for a spot in the postseason. So the fact that they remain within striking distance of the 10th seed despite their health issues and the strong competition they faced, it's remarkable. And there's a chance they'll be able to add a few wins once they get to play against some of the worst teams in the league. Still, there are also other reasons why they've been unable to win games like they did last season, and most of them have had to do with the fact their historical offense has taken a step back. After leading the league in offensive rating last season, they've fallen to the 16th place this year, and there have been 2 areas in particular where their production has been concerning, to say the least. 3-point shooting and scoring in the clutch. One of the reasons why they were so good at scoring during the last year was because they made a high percentage of their shots from 3-point range. It was common for them to have Doncic driving to the basket and then kicking the ball out to the open man once the defense collapsed trying to stop him. That hasn't changed a lot, but for some reason, the percentage of their made shots from long range has taken a hit. Their 3-point percentage went from 10th best in the league at 36.7% to dead last at 33.8%. The absence of Seth Curry and J.J. Barea has clearly been a factor in their regression from long range. In Curry's replacement, Josh Richardson hasn't been as effective shooting the ball as was expected from him. But it's not only been one player who's struggled from outside the 3-point line. Other than Maxi Kleber and Jalen Brunson, every player on their rotation has taken a step back when it comes to that area, and that includes Luka and Kristaps. We could probably relate that with their health and consistency issues. The fact that most of their players have struggled with injuries or health protocols has clearly taken a toll on their offense, and we can tell that by looking at the way they've been playing. For instance, while Porzingis has looked solid since making his season debut, it's clear he's not at the same level he was during the end of last season. Most of his averages have been down as a result, and while it may be only a matter of time before he gets back at full strength, his slow start has been one of the reasons why the Mavericks have failed to keep up with the competition. The same happens with most of his teammates. While their numbers don't look that bad on paper, consistently having people miss games has affected everyone's production other than Luka, and we can notice that on their box plus-minus. Outside of the Slovenian, there's currently only one player with a positive box plus-minus, and that's 33-year-old James Johnson. The ineffectiveness of their role players from long range has made things more difficult on the offensive end. Without them posing a consistent threat, the game has often become over-reliant on Doncic, and opposing teams have taken notice of that. Now the young star is receiving more attention than ever, and unlike the last couple of years, he's been visually frustrated on the court when things don't go his way. That's made the Mavericks hard to watch. Over the last few games, they've rarely looked like they enjoy the game, and that's been especially true in the clutch. Last season, they were not an elite team when it came to closing games out. In fact, the record in clutch situations was just 17-24. However, it was easier for them to deal with such situations when losing wasn't as usual. This season, they're already 3-6 in those situations, and while it's great to see Doncic go in a personal shootout against players like Steph Curry, most time it feels like the team is about to let games slip away at the last possible second. But is there a way for them to make things right? As we mentioned earlier, the simple fact that they remain healthy should help them develop a rhythm. If the players that have missed the most games regain their original form, the Mavericks should be able to compete against anyone in the West. But will that be enough? Currently, there are 3 teams in the West with a record of 500 or better that are outside of the playoff picture. Of course, 2 of those teams would be able to participate in the play-in tournament, although at a disadvantage against the teams that finish with the 7th and 8th seeds. And the trouble is the Mavericks are still a few games away from those teams. So things could become very difficult for them this time around. Last season, they finished last in the conference among teams with a winning record, and there was even a team that made the playoffs despite having a losing record. But this time around, just being a little above average may not be enough to make it to the postseason. So Dallas may need an additional push to be able to get there. And assuming there won't be any blockbuster trades taking place, there's only one person who could help them with that. In the past, we've seen players like Curry, James Harden, Damian Lillard taking on the responsibility of carrying their respective teams to the playoffs. Each of them took their games to the next level to help their franchises get enough wins to make it to the postseason. Now it may be Doncic's turn to do the same. The Slovenian finished in the top 5 in MVP voting last year. Before the start of the season, he was the odds-makers' favorite to win the award this time around. Now it seems like that goal may be a little out of reach, but that shouldn't stop him from playing at that level. As a matter of fact, he's already performing at that level. You won't find many players averaging almost 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists per game and doing the things he does. But even if it sounds unfair to him, that hasn't been enough. The Mavericks are in a difficult spot right now, and even though there's still hope their role players can become more productive, they may need additional help from their superstar. Luka may need to keep playing as he did in their latest game against the Warriors for them to have a real shot at the postseason. But will he be able to do it in a season as complicated as this one? Only time will tell. In the end, the destiny of the Mavericks may fall in the hands of their best player. It sounds like a huge responsibility for a player that is just about to turn 22. But that's been the case for Dallas over the last 2 years. And with role players suffering the consequences of the pandemic and their second star still to regain his form, there may not be another way for them to make noise this season. But now, do you think Luka will be able to carry the Mavericks to the playoffs? Or will they keep falling behind the rest of the competition? Let us know in the comments. We hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to like it and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. We are Courtside.